So this part's new for me. I've never done a Q&A before. Often I'm the one that sort of does the speaking, and this is kind of a vulnerable place because you could ask me anything, and I'd actually answer it as well. But I want to start by saying, no, actually, I'll leave that at the end. I'll leave it at the end. Fire away. Does anyone have any questions for me? Yes.
When did you start writing poetry?
Okay, so I didn't think that I was a writer at all. I would never have said I was any good at English language literature or anything like that. I mean, it was okay. I enjoyed it, but I enjoyed other subjects a little bit more. So I never saw myself as a writer at all. When I would say I actually started writing was during the lockdown. No, before the lockdown. So I have 2 children. I'm blessed with 2 children, a girl and a boy. But when I was pregnant with my son, I suffered a lot with anxiety, and the reason for that was because I have had 4 miscarriages. So I've lost 4 children, and the anxiety of losing another one, it would have killed me, it would have devastated me. So I didn't know how to deal with that anxiety, and obviously I can't drink. It would have been really good to be able to do it. I couldn't. And I was taking these medicines to try to stay pregnant. So I was injecting myself and doing all sorts of things. I was dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and I was doing everything that the doctor told me to do. But yet I suffered with anxiety in the 8th month because they said, you need to stop injecting yourself now. Otherwise, you're just going to suffer during the delivery, so you need to stop. And I said, well, these injections are what are keeping my child alive. And I started suddenly panicking, and I thought, I'm going to lose him. I'm going to lose him. I am going to lose him. I'm not going to survive this last month. And the anxiety that I felt in that whole process was so much that I had to get it out of me somehow. And then I only wrote a poem for me. It was never to be shared with anyone else. It was never for anyone else's eyes. It was my way of dealing with my anxiety. So I wrote this poem. Then the lockdown happened, and being a brown woman, I would never have told anyone that I had a miscarriage. In fact, it was a source of shame for me because I thought I'd failed. And then I realised eventually I hadn't. It was just nature taking its course, and I understand there's no shame in that. But in the lockdown, a lot of people were lonely, they were by themselves, they were suffering with anxiety, depression, losing people that they loved. And this was already a difficult situation to be in. So to face losing a child, whether it's a stillborn or whether it's an early miscarriage or whatever you want to, however you want to call it, was really difficult, especially for people who look like me, who needed someone like me to say, yeah, me too, it happened to me. If you're going through this, you can speak to me about it. So then I shared my first poem very reluctantly, and I remember it wasn't even in a Word document. It was screenshots from my notes in my notes app on my phone. So it didn't look professional or anything like that. But it was just to say, hey guys, if you are going through something, turn to me. And even if you don't have to tell me, you don't have to make small talk, just tell me what you're going through. If you need someone, I've been there. I've suffered. I know this is what it did to me. I don't want you to suffer alone. So that's why I shared my first poem, and when I did, it was amazing because, obviously a lot of people said, I feel sorry for you, sorry that you went through this. And I started out with, I'm in the best phase of my life. I'm really happy. This is not for me, it's about you. But a lot of people reached out to me and said, I've just had a miscarriage, or I had a miscarriage a few weeks ago, I felt really lonely, or I've been trying to get pregnant. And a lot of people started talking to me about taboo issues. Then I wrote another poem called Endometriosis, and I started sharing taboo topics. And I thought, I'm just going to write about every single thing that we're too ashamed to talk about. I'm going to do that. So I started writing about periods, about endometriosis, about miscarriages, about sexual abuse, about domestic violence, any taboo topic. And there's a lot of taboo topics that we want to turn our back on and brush under the carpet. I thought that I should do that because if it means that someone feels less lonely, or if it's helped someone in terms of their mental well-being, why not? 10 people might be in a room and 9 people, my poems will not resonate with them, and thankfully they will not resonate with them. But for that one person who doesn't have someone to lean on, who this might help them. And I said that's the reason why I started sharing my poetry and writing, and it kind of went into a podcast. And then I started interviewing authors, activists, writers, poets, and it became something where you kind of rip the band-aid off and start talking about lots of issues. So it snowballed from there. And then someone put this idea in my head and said, you know, you've written how many poems now? I said, oh, I don't know, about 120. And they said, whoa, that's a lot, that's a book. And I said, oh, okay, is it? And then my friend said, you know, why don't you just like try to see if you could write a book? And then that idea was in my head, and like the song that I couldn't get out of my head, I became obsessed. And now I'm sat here today on the other side of obsessed, on the other side of my poem that I wrote, which was just for me.
Yeah. Do you have any sort of hero, you know, literary heroes, be it poets, be it writers?
You know, there's one person that comes to mind, and her name is Rupi Kaur. Now, a lot of people say that she's not a good poet because she's not like the greats, and she's different. Yes, she writes micro poetry. A lot of people class her as an Instagram poet, and which they say is not a real poet. I mean, for me, poetry is just expression. It's if someone can tug at your heartstrings, that person is an artist to me. If they can make me feel something, that person is important to me. And the reason why Rupi Kaur was an inspiration was because, as I mentioned, I was a very private person growing up. I wouldn't have done anything like this. And I think she's an inspiration for me because, A, she's Punjabi Canadian. So here there's this brown woman who looks like me, who speaks Punjabi, and she's talking about sexual abuse, and she's talking about all these taboo topics and things that she's been through in a way that unites people and inspires people. And she illustrates as well. So I really admired this girl that was able to turn something that was a very negative time in her life into art. And I think that's what art is. You know, there's a lot of different types of people that you have around you. And I think if someone can ruminate and marinate on a negative situation and then lift themselves out of it, but at the same time lift other people too, I think for me that's amazing. So I think for me she's a hero to me. I think the other person that I really admire is not a poet, and she's a really bad singer as well. It's my mum. So I didn't get any singing from her. I really respect her struggle, the struggle that it must have been going back a generation ago, being a woman, trying to make it in this world where you don't speak the language, so you're learning a language or learning about a new culture, you're trying to integrate, but at the same time hold on to your roots. And that struggle in terms of identity is something I've struggled with a lot. And I know that my children will struggle in a different way because I'm Indian, so I had two cultures to deal with, which was being Indian and also being British. So that was two parts of my identity, which I found a lovely harmonious mix. I just discard the bits of the cultures that I don't like and make a new culture, a new order. But for my children, it will be a lot harder. And I wonder who their heroes will be. I wonder who the people will be that they look up to, because they have three cultures to deal with: English or British culture, Indian culture, and their French roots. So I think it kind of goes around. I think nobody is one particular culture. I mean, you may be British, but your heart might be Brazilian. I don't know. Thank you. Sorry, you hit something at the back, yeah.
You mentioned you were a quite private girl. When did you, or how did you develop the confidence to speak so eloquently in front of a group of people, or did you always have it?
You know, I had braces once when I was younger, and the teacher, I think I was 8, and the teacher said, Angela, it's just not stopped you talking, has it? Because I said, nope, nothing, not stopped me talking. Yeah. So I was always really, really chatty, but I was private. I wouldn't talk about certain taboos. I think, I don't know the exact moment. I just thought, pardon my French, it. You know, just do it. Do it because you are responsible to yourself. And I think it's my daughter that taught me this because, you know, being a mother changed me. here I was growing up in a very demure way, in a very humble way, a private way, but I was telling my daughter, you can be anything you want to be. You can be an actress, you can be a doctor, you can be all this, you can do whatever you want to achieve, but yet I was a hypocrite because I wasn't standing up for myself and I wasn't doing things that I was saying to her. And I think there was a moment where in my personal life I've suffered different types of abuse. And I think there was a moment where the people who were supposed to protect me were telling me to be silent because no one would believe you. You know, don't tell anyone because no one's going to trust what you're saying. And it happened so long ago. Just forget about it. It's okay. But I believe that what that does is it kind of supports the abuser instead of standing up for the victim. And I think that the thought where someone said to me, well, this person who has been a bad person, you may not be the only one. And then I thought, so someone else could have also suffered in the same situation. And there's lots of us thinking, don't tell anyone, no one's going to believe you. And then that's when I had a pocket moment. I'm going to write about it. So that was my moment where I was at my most lowest, and I thought I'm going to just do it. And if people don't accept me, they don't accept me. I think I know the people who support me: my husband, my children, those are my friends. Those are the people who are the family I choose. So yeah, that's why I decided to start writing, because someone needs to talk about some of these topics, and sometimes it just needs to come from someone who looks like you. Yes, Karen?
You working on anything else at the moment?
Yes. I recently quit my job, so I stopped working in one sense. I basically had another moment where I had these moments. I'm very impulsive, and I said to my husband, I have handed my resignation in. That conversation didn't go down too well, but I just said, I have had this moment, this epiphany. This was not my calling. I was never supposed to do this job, and this is what I want to do instead. This is my dream. This is my ambition. So then I started putting things out in the universe, and one of the lovely people that helped me was Karen, the person who said just ask the question. And I think coming to the library has been one of the biggest things for me, because it means a lot to me to be part of the community, to give something back. So this was one of the big moments, the big things for me. I am performing at Birmingham Literature Festival called Desi Blitz. So whilst Hertfordshire is my home now, my roots are in the Midlands. So to go back to the community over there, to perform in front of them as an author, that's something that I've got going on as well. And the other thing that I'm doing is releasing an EP, so an extended play, an album of spoken word poetry. So I said in the beginning, music was a really big part of who I am. And I've never known how to marry my two worlds, music and poetry. And whilst I may have sung a little bit shakily in front of you today, I want to do more. So I'm releasing an album with a producer where there will be spoken word poetry to, with my voice, drum and bass. So I know that doesn't make any sense, but we're making it work. So I'm trying new things, and I think the dream is to carry on doing this. I'm trying to manifest spotlight right now. So those are the few things I've got going on at the moment.
Well, you're getting applause at the end, but let's give Karen applause.
Yeah. 100%, because actually I think sometimes it just takes one person to listen to you and to see you. And I think Caroline and Karen, you've been those beacons of light for me, and I'm incredibly grateful to have this opportunity. And I'm proud that it's here in my town now. Where better would it be to kickstart my career? How are we doing for time? Would anyone else like to ask a question? Yeah.
What age did you move to Barcelona, and what made you go there?
I actually studied. My parents wanted me to study pharmacy. I failed all the stuff for that because that just wasn't my thing. So I studied tourism instead, only because I wanted to travel. And I realised there are many paths that I could have taken instead of studying tourism. But the one path that took me down was on an Erasmus student exchange at 18. virgin, never drank, fell in love with Barcelona. I absolutely loved Barcelona. So yeah, I was 18 years old when I got to travel, and I think traveling is important because it expands your worldview. So if you've been fortunate enough to travel, and I don't just mean staying in a hotel, I mean really travel, going around, living with a local family, or having a friend take you around their country, or backpacking if you're really, really lucky. That, I mean, I had that opportunity to live in Barcelona for 3 months, which was wonderful. And I realized how small my world was before I went and saw another culture, because everything about that culture was new to me. It was different. I mean, flamenco, the language, the way that people were, the siesta. There was just so many new things that's different to British culture and very different to Indian culture. And then later on in my life, I had an opportunity to live in Brazil. So I lived there for 6, 7 months, and I taught English out there, and that was wonderful because again, a lot of first times for me. Never had beef before, never. I never had certain types of meals before, and it challenged my conception or misconception of what life was. So there's a lot of my beliefs that were massively challenged by traveling. So I think traveling is really, really important, and if you have the opportunity, I think it's wonderful. I mean, in Britain we're so fortunate anyway, because you know the person next to you is from a different country or speaks a different language. So we're so lucky that we're this melting pot of culture. But if you have the opportunity to travel, which as I had, it's huge. Yeah. Yes, Caroline.
Well, I remember you mentioning to me that you'd work with children as well in the past. Is that something you would like to combine with the poetry at some point? Would you like to do some of that with children that might not potentially have had any introduction to poetry in the past?
Yes, I think so, because I think children are wonderfully creative, and I think Picasso said that children unlearn their creativity as they get older. So they're all born artists. We are all born artists, and then as we get older, slowly that kind of fizzles out a little bit. So I think it'd be wonderful to work with children. My background is in teaching as well, but 16-year-olds, and I think I miss that. But having got 2 little children of my own, it's wonderful when my daughter comes home and she tells me what she's doing at Sheridan's Primary School and all the wonderful opportunities that she's getting in terms of poetry, and she creates things. And I think that she likes to write poetry as well. She writes people's lines when they have assemblies, and everyone in the front row, she's written all their lines for them, and I'd like to think I have a small part to play in that. But I would love to give back to the community. I don't know how, but I would love to work with schools or do workshops. But working with children is really important because I think they're not exposed to enough creativity. Depending on your background, depending on your opportunities, your schools, not everyone has the opportunity financially to send their children to clubs and etc. So I think that poetry is a wonderful way to express yourself. For me, it was a cathartic release. And for children, I think they need that form of expression. It's not just send them to sports, they've got a lot of energy. It's also about going inside. And for me, it's a spiritual, meditative thing now. So I think I would love to be able to work with adults or children. As I said, I quit my job, so if you've got any ideas, I'm game.
So you might not know how, but we'll have a few ideas. So.
Yes. Yes, the lady with the pink hair.
Did poetry come better after motherhood? And I have another question. Would you, if you were to recommend 3 books for us to read, what would they be?
Ooh, I love books, so this is a hard one. Okay, I've recently finished reading Harry Potter with my daughter. I massively recommend that because J.K. Rowling is a bad. Funnily enough, she was suffering in an abusive relationship and she used to read stories to her children. That's how Harry Potter was created. And she had so many rejections from all the big publishing companies, but yet she persevered. So she's a hero of mine as well, J.K. Rowling, for many reasons. So yeah, Harry Potter would be one that I recommend. There's one called Humankind, which I'm one of my favourite books because Humankind is about all the bad things that have happened in the world, but essentially the message is this, that, so you know the Lord of the Flies, have you ever read that?
Yeah.
I would not recommend that book because actually it was a lie. Apparently these boys on the island that never happened. These boys actually did get shipwrecked and ended up on an island, but they actually worked harmoniously with each other. But the author decided to make it sensationalized and said they started killing each other or hurting each other, which is how a sensational book was created. But this guy who wrote Humankind, he says the resilience of the human heart is so strong that it actually is a situation where when we are in trouble, we help each other. Apparently in Britain, when the Blitz happened, that was the moment that a lot of people reminisce about. I mean, the author writes that people said how we all pulled together, not we, I wasn't alive then, how we all pulled together as a country. And he says that when humans face adversity, we pull together as a species, we do that. We don't get along with each other on a day-to-day basis, but adversity does bring us together. So the resilience of the human heart is celebrated in Humankind. And I'm trying to think of a third one. It's a lot of pressure. I can't think of one. Come back round to it. Yeah, my book. I don't know. Maybe my book. And I think your first question was, did poetry come to me after motherhood?
Did motherhood refine your
Oh, sorry.
poetry?
Did motherhood refine my poetry? Yes. And I'd say that I felt everything deeper. When you become a mother, I was scared of every single thing. I'm the girl that used to bungee jump. I'm the girl that used to skydive. I would get very drunk and dance on tables. I was completely liberated, and then I had a child and I was afraid of every single thing because I had this 24-karat gold baby that was so precious to me. I was afraid of breaking it, hurting it, and I think it changed the way I felt and interacted with people, and it changed the way that I was massively. But in terms of poetry, I think that I've started writing a lot about motherhood. It's just one topic that I haven't written about a lot in this book, Honeybee, but I think it's probably one that I would like to write about and explore more in another one. But yes, poetry has massively changed me, and one of the other things it's taught me is how to be more playful. So yeah. Yes, the lady with the green cardigan.
Yes, I just wondered if you had any more ambitions or where you ideally want to be in 5 years.
That's like a careers advisor question, isn't it? That's a hard one. I think in 5 years' time, I would like to be. This is being recorded now. This doesn't happen. It's a lot of pressure. Okay, so in 5 years' time, I want to be standing on a stage, performing to large crowds where I have a band behind me. So it's not just me that you enjoy. You know, I would like a sitarist. I would like a tabla player. Give me someone who plays the drums. I want to have a band behind me who can support me with Indian classical music instruments. And also Western instruments. Traditionally, poetry was performed with a harp. So back in the royal courts where the bard would be performing, it would always be with a harp. And in India, traditionally, poets, or kavis, as we say in India, they would perform to the royal courts. So they would perform poetry for the daytime or the poetry for the nighttime, depending on the mood, to create ambience. But it would also be to music. So I think that art has kind of stopped, and now a lot of people, you see, when you say, oh, poetry to music, they say, oh, do you mean rap? No, I don't mean rap. And no swearing either in my poetry, but I think that's the dream for me, to perform to crowds of people, but I would also like to give back to the community and do workshops in whatever capacity, whatever my ability is. I would like to give back to the community. In 5 years' time, I'd like to do that. And I was actually talking about something with a friend of mine just the other day. I'd like to create a community for women to be able to celebrate motherhood. So it's something that I've not fully stepped into. I would like to create a community where women can vent, share their creative art, where they can connect to each other. Because I think, yes, when you get pregnant, yes, there's NCT. If you can afford it, yeah, if you're lucky enough, you make some friends around that. But sometimes you need to creatively let out whatever it is that you've got. So I'd like to create like an open mic night for women. Or parents, no, women. Okay, so yes, I'd like to create something, a sense of community, because I write from a place where I didn't have those things, and I'm fortunate enough to have a partner that supports me in all of my dreams, and I would like to give something back. So that's a dream of mine as well. And if my marriage can withstand it and this home renovation project can withstand it, I'd like to write another book. Does anyone have a last question? And if not, I can do my last poem. No? Oh, yes, yes.
I don't know who said it, I guess it was a poet, but they said a poem is never finished, it's only discarded, something like that. Do you feel that about any of your poems, as in that I guess they meant they never get it quite right, they just leave it?
I think it's like emotions, isn't it? When we have hindsight, we look back at something and go, yeah, that made sense now. It's the same with my poems. I can look back and I say, this works, this doesn't work, in terms of the language, in terms of the musicality, in terms of the rhythm and the rhyme. There's that element, the technical part. But also in terms of the emotions, I look back and think, yeah, I could refine this. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful. It's always a process where you're going forwards and backwards. You're never finished. And I think the minute that you think that you're brilliant, I think you are not, because you've become stagnant, and that's something that I don't want to ever be. I want to keep on redefining and rediscovering who I am. And I've struggled with my identity, and I hope that that struggle never finishes, because I want to keep on uncovering the layers of who I am. And I would just like to finish with one last poem, and it's called Healing. So healing isn't about closing a wound or finding a fix. It's recognizing that you may still hurt for a really, really long time, and finding the courage to be truthful with yourself in the unpredictable moments. It's about surrounding yourself with a tribe that respect and reflect your values and your journey, and help add pieces to your jigsaw puzzle. Healing is about honoring that you're not broken, that you are transforming. Thank you so much.